This is lesson 442 in Muhammad and the Rise of Islam. Essential question: who was Muhammad and how did he unite the Arab people? Around 622 AD, a new monotheistic religion called Islam came about. This faith was founded by the Prophet Muhammad. His followers, called Muslims, spread Islam throughout the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and even Europe. By 750 AD, Muslim leaders built an empire, and you can see it right here. The Islamic Empire connected diverse people through religion and trade. Muslim scholars focused on learning and developed numerous cultural and academic achievements that are still used today. An overview of Islam. Today, Islam is the world's fastest growing religion with more than 1 billion followers throughout the world. And here's a map of the Eastern Hemisphere, which shows the Muslim world. But here's a question: what was Arabia like before Muhammad? Arabia was the place where Islam began. Arabia, this peninsula right here, was the birthplace of Islam. Now let's figure out where we are right here. We've got the Tigris and the Euphrates right here, Mesopotamia right there to the north. And you've got the Mediterranean Sea right here. There's its eastern edge. And you've got this peninsula right here. And this peninsula is called the Arabian Peninsula. And that's where it all started. The Arabian Peninsula is a desert region with little fertile soil for farming. Most Arabs lived in desert tribes, which could be divided up into clans, which could be further divided up into families. Arabia was not united under a single government, but Arabs did have a common language, Arabic. Before Islam, most Arabs were polytheistic. Sounds like there wouldn't be much going on in Arabia, but actually Arabia was the intersection of 3 continents: Africa, Asia, and Europe. So it was an important region for trade, and it had lots of cultural diffusion. One of the wealthiest trade cities in Arabia was the city of Mecca, and you can see it right there close to the Red Sea. Mecca was also a religious center. The Kaaba, which we can see right here in this picture, was a cube-shaped shrine that held statues of hundreds of gods. Remember, this was polytheism. Arabs from all over made pilgrimages to Mecca to visit the Kaaba. The Arabs and polytheism. Most early Arabs at this time were polytheistic. They traced their ancestry to Abraham and his son Ishmael, who were believed to have built this shrine called the Kaaba at Mecca together. So who was this Muhammad? The early life of Muhammad. Muhammad was born in this important Arabian city of Mecca in the year 570 AD. He was part of the largest and most powerful tribe in Mecca, the Quraysh. And this was a tribe of merchants who controlled the economic life of the city. However, Muhammad's clan within that tribe, the Banu Hashim, were relatively poor. Muhammad was orphaned at a young age, and he was raised by his grandparents. As an adult, Muhammad became an honest and successful merchant. And Muhammad's work brought him into contact with Jewish and Christian merchants in the area, and he became a caravan manager. He married his boss, who was a rich older widow named Khadijah, and Muhammad and Khadijah had 6 children together. Muhammad spent his youth and much of his adulthood just as a regular guy working for his merchant wife's business. But Muhammad was troubled by the economic gap that he saw between the rich merchants and most Meccans, who he thought were simple and honest people. So what happened to Muhammad in the year 610 when he would have been about 40 years old? Muhammad often went into the hills just outside of town to meditate. And while meditating, Muslims believe that Muhammad started receiving revelations from God through the angel Gabriel. And Gabriel told Muhammad to recite what he heard as if in a poem. These recitations took the form of beautiful, rhythmic, spoken poetry. Recited poetry was already extremely popular in Arabia. Arabs often held regular competitions and contests to see who the best poet was. Muhammad would continue to receive and recite such messages for the rest of his life. And these recitations would later be collected and compiled into the Muslim holy book, the Quran. At first, Muhammad was terrified by these visions. He thought he might be losing his mind. He contemplated suicide. But after much soul searching and talking to friends and relatives, he started to believe his visions. Muhammad came to believe that Allah had revealed himself partially through Moses, that's Judaism, and through Jesus, that's Christianity. However, Allah's final and most important revelations were to him. And therefore Muhammad was God's last and therefore greatest prophet. Muhammad began to teach that Allah was the one and only God. All other gods were false and must be abandoned. You could say that he preached about the oneness of God. People who agreed with this basic principle of oneness believed in Islam and were called Muslims. In Arabic, the word Islam means submission to the will of Allah. And so the word Muslim actually means a submitter or one who has submitted. So how did some people respond to Muhammad's new religion? Reactions to Islam. By the year 613, Muhammad began preaching his new ideas in his hometown of Mecca. Some people were attracted to Islam. Muhammad's wife Khadijah and several close friends and relatives were among his first followers. But many people, even from his own tribe, feared Muhammad's growing popularity, and they especially feared that the city of Mecca would lose its status and its nice income as a holy city in their current polytheistic religion. And they often reacted to Muhammad's message violently. So how did Muhammad react to the violence done by non-Muslims in Mecca? The Hijrah. Muhammad and his followers suffered so much persecution from Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh, that Muhammad thought it best to leave his hometown of Mecca. Muhammad and his followers fled to the Arabian city of Medina, also known as Yathrib. The people of Medina had invited Muhammad to come because they had lots of internal disputes, which they hoped Muhammad would help them solve. This move is known as the Hijrah. Muhammad and one of his most loyal followers, Abu Bakr, left Medina in the middle of the night. The significance of the Hijrah is this. It was in the year 622 CE or AD that the Hijrah took place. And 622 CE marks the beginning of the Muslim calendar right here at this event. In the city of Medina, Muhammad gained new converts. These converts put Islam above their families and their clans, and Muhammad initially taught respect for Christians and Jews as what he called people of the book. Islam's beginnings. Review. Muhammad dedicated his life to preaching these teachings as God's chosen prophet and messenger. He gained followers and he encountered stiff resistance. He endured many years of trials and tribulations and adventures spreading his message. And he eventually conquered and united just about the entire Arabian Peninsula for the first time ever. Muhammad did not separate political and religious authority. Submission to the will of Allah meant submitting to his prophet, and Muhammad became a religious, political, and military leader. In the year 630, Muhammad returned to Mecca with 10,000 soldiers. The city surrendered, and many residents converted to Islam. Muhammad spared the city, but he destroyed all the gods' statues and pictures in the Kaaba. And then he declared the Kaaba to be a sacred shrine to Allah. Up on the upper left here is a picture of what some of these statues might have looked like. These are not Arabian statues. These are actually Mesopotamian statues, but Mesopotamia is basically right next door. And then below that, you've got a picture of your classic iconoclast, taking a weapon to these statues and destroying this idolatrous tribute to a false and evil god. What did Muhammad do after he gained converts and returned to the city of Mecca, his hometown? In the year 632, Muhammad suddenly and inexplicably became very ill, and he died within just a couple of days. And Muhammad's followers collected his recitations and preserved them in written form. And this collection came to be called the Quran, which means recitations. So what is the basic concept of Islam? Basic beliefs of Islam. Followers of Islam are called Muslims, and they believe in one God called Allah. Allah is the same God worshipped by Jews and Christians, and Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last and therefore the greatest of God's prophets. The main thrust of Muhammad's teachings. There is absolutely and only one God. Hence, Islam is monotheistic to a very high degree. Believers need to submit themselves to the will of God, and as I said before, the word Islam means submission, and the word Muslim means a submitter. This is the flag of the modern country of Saudi Arabia, and this flag says in 7th century Arabic, God is one, and Muhammad was the last prophet. Where does that come from? The Quran. Quran contains ethical guidelines for Muslims, those who practice Islam. Islam has only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Muhammad is not considered divine as Jesus is. He's a prophet who conveys Allah's final revelation. To do Allah's will, one must follow an ethical code comprised of the 5 pillars of Islam. These are the 5 pillars of Islam. Number 1, your profession of faith, professing that you believe in one God, Allah, and that Muhammad was God's last and therefore greatest prophet. Number 2, prayer 5 times daily. Number 3, the giving of alms, in other words, giving to charity, giving to the poor. Number 4, fasting during the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month out of the year. Number 5, making the Hajj. The Hajj is a pilgrimage to visit the city of Mecca at least once during your lifetime. Mecca is the site of Islam's holiest shrine. Mecca is also Muhammad's hometown, and Mecca is located today in the country of Saudi Arabia. The Hajj is still undertaken by Muslims today. Important documents. The Quran. It means recitations. The Hadiths, and these are accounts of the sayings and conduct of the Prophet Muhammad. These are not recitations like in the Quran. The Hadiths are not direct quotations from God like the Quran is. And the various Hadiths are not equal. They are actually assigned varying levels of reliability. Another part of Islam is fatwas, and these are legal rulings of Islamic scholars. So what is Sharia law? We hear a lot about that in the news. And this is ancient Islamic law. It's based upon sources like the Quran, the Hadiths, and the fatwas. Not all Islamic countries follow Sharia law. Sharia law regulates daily life in numerous Islamic countries. These include dietary restrictions, no pork, no alcohol, and it impacts formal and informal legal institutions and policy making. What happened to Islam after Muhammad's death? After Muhammad died, Islamic leaders created an Islamic empire. And this Islamic empire had well-trained troops that conquered nearby regions. Islam spread primarily, though not exclusively, by military conquest. And this massive empire led to great wealth for Muslims and new opportunities to spread their faith far and wide.